The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, often simply Verkhovna Rada or just Rada, is the unicameral parliament of Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada is composed of 450 deputies, who are presided over by a chairman. Because of the war in Donbass and the unilateral annexation of Crimea by Russia, elections for the constituencies situated in Donbass and Crimea were not held in the 2014 Ukrainian parliamentary election. Hence the current composition of the Verkhovna Rada consists of 423 deputies. The Verkhovna Rada meets in the Verkhovna Rada building in Ukraine's capital Kiev. The Verkhovna Rada was transformed from the Supreme Soviet of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic that was first established in 1938 as the legislature of the Ukrainian SSR after the reorganization of the Central Executive Committee of the Ukrainian SSR. Since 1938, 17 convocations of the Verkhovna Rada have been held. The 14th convocation of the Supreme Soviet of the Ukrainian SSR issued the Declaration of Independence of Ukraine, introduced dramatic reforms to all aspects of life, and officially changed the numbering of sessions, proclaiming itself the first convocation of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. The current parliament is the 8th convocation. In elections to the Verkhovna Rada, a mixed voting system is used. 50% of seats are distributed under party lists with a 5% election threshold and 50% through first-past-the-post in single-member constituencies. The method of 50/50 mixed elections was used in the 2002 and 2012 elections. However, in 2006 and 2007, the elections were held under a proportional system only. Name: the name Rada means council, reed. It originated in Kiev and Rus, and then represented a boyar and higher clergy council. It was also used by Dnieper Cossacks in the 17th and 18th centuries for the meetings where major decisions were made and new councils were elected by popular vote. This name was later used by the Ukrainian Revolutionary Government between March 17, 1917 and April 29, 1918. Verkhovna is the feminine form of the adjective th² th micron n euro n th 3/4 th squared th 1/2 th to the first meaning supreme. It is derived from the Ukrainian word th² th micron n euro n meaning top. Another name used less often is the Parliament of Ukraine. History Soviet period The Supreme Soviet of the Ukrainian SSR replaced the All-Ukrainian Congress of Soviets as the legislative authority of Soviet Ukraine according to the 1937 Constitution of the Ukrainian SSR. The All-Ukrainian Congress of Soviets had already been renamed the Supreme Soviet in 1927. The Congress of Soviets was initiated by the Central Executive Committee of Ukraine. The last chairman of the committee was Hoye Petrovsky. The first elections to the Supreme Soviet of the Ukrainian SSR took place on June 26, 1938. The first session of the parliament took place in Kiev on July 25 through 28, 1938. The first chairman of the Rada was Mikhailo Burmistenko, who later died during World War II. In 1938, a presidium of the Rada was created that was led by Leonid Kornilets. During the war the presidium was evacuated to the city of Saratov in the Russian SFSR. On June 29, 1943, the presidium issued an order postponing elections for the new convocation for 1 year while extending the first convocation. On January 8, 1944, the cabinet ministers of the Ukrainian SSR in agreement with the Communist Party decided to relocate the presidium of the Supreme Soviet from Kharkiv to Kiev. New elections were scheduled for February 9, 1947. Post-Soviet period After Ukrainian independence, the name for the Ukrainian parliament in English was altered from Supreme Soviet to its current form. The first partially free election to select deputies to the Verkhovna Rada was held in March 1990. Although the Communist Party still remained in control, a democratic bloc was formed by numerous parties, including People's Movement of Ukraine, Helsinki Watch Committee of Ukraine, Party of Greens of Ukraine, and many others. The 12th convocation of the Supreme Soviet of the Ukrainian SSR issued the Declaration of State Sovereignty of Ukraine on July 16, 1990, and declared Ukrainian independence on August 24, 1991, at approximately 6 p.m. local time. At the time, the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada was Leonid Kravchuk. The act of Ukrainian independence was overwhelmingly supported in a national referendum held on December 1, 1991. On September 12, 1991, the parliament adopted the law on legal succession of Ukraine. The Constitution of Ukraine was adopted by the 13th Convocation of the Verkhovna Rada on June 28, 1996, at approximately 9 a.m. local time. The Parliament's 14th Convocation officially changed the numbering of the convocations, proclaiming itself the third convocation of the Verkhovna Rada. After the Orange Revolution, constitutional amendments were adopted on December 8, 2004, by the fourth convocation of the Verkhovna Rada. On October 1, 2010, the Constitutional Court of Ukraine overturned the 2004 amendments, considering them unconstitutional. On February 21, 2014, Parliament reinstated the December 2004 amendments to the Constitution. Location: the Verkhovna Rada meets in a neoclassical building on Kiev's Ulitsia Mikhaila Hrushevskого and Ploshcha Konstitutsiya. The building adjoins Mariinsky Park and the 18th-century Mariinsky Palace, designed by Bartolomeo Rastrelli, which serves as the official residence of the President of Ukraine. After the transfer of the capital of the Ukrainian SSR from Kharkiv to Kiev in 1934, a whole set of government buildings was planned for the city. In 1936, a contest for the construction of the new parliament building was won by architect Volodymyr Zabolotny. The original building was constructed from 1936-38. Having been destroyed in the Second World War, the building was reconstructed from 1945 to 1947, with the rebuilt glass dome 1 meter higher than the original. Other locations: Palace Ukraina, Ukrainian House, Building of Budget Committee. Mission and authority: the Verkhovna Rada is the sole body of legislative power in Ukraine. The parliament determines the principles of domestic and foreign policy, introduces amendments to the Constitution of Ukraine, adopts laws, approves the state budget, designates elections for the President of Ukraine, impeaches the President, declares war and peace, appoints the Prime Minister of Ukraine, appoints or confirms certain officials, appoints 1/3 of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, elects judges for permanent terms, ratifies and denounces international treaties, and exercises certain control functions. All procedural regulations are contained in the Law on Regulations of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. The latest version of the document was adopted on December 16, 2012, in which through the initiative of the President of Ukraine amendments were made concerning registration and voting by parliamentarians. 2012 became a year of numerous changes in regards to the document, among which were changes to the election of the chairman. Bills are usually considered following the procedure of 3 readings. The President of Ukraine must sign a law before it can be officially promulgated. Composition: the Verkhovna Rada is a unicameral legislature with 450 people's deputies elected on the basis of equal and direct universal suffrage through a secret ballot. Parliamentary factions, groups, and parties. All members of parliament are grouped in parliamentary factions and groups. Members of parliament who were elected from a certain party list are not necessarily members of that party. Parties that break the 5% electoral threshold form factions in the parliament. The formation of official parliamentary factions is regulated by the Verkhovna Rada's rules and procedures. Only 15 or more deputies may form a parliamentary faction, and a MP may be a member of only one faction at a time. The chairman and his 2 vice-chairmen may not be the heads of factions. Deputies who are expelled from factions or decide to leave them become individual lawmakers. Individual deputies are allowed to unite into parliamentary groups of people's deputies that again have at least 15 deputies. Several influential parties have been founded after originally being formed as a faction in the Verkhovna Rada, for example, the Party of Regions, All Ukrainian Union Furtherland, and Labour Ukraine. Each parliamentary faction or group appoints a leader. MPs who defect from one faction to another are known as Chishki, a derogatory name meaning carcass. The term is applied to deputies allegedly bribed to switch factions. Since the 2014 parliamentary election, women made up 11.1% of the parliament, setting a record for Ukraine. After the 2012 parliamentary election, women made up 10% of the parliament. In 2010 they made up 8.5%. The EU average for female representation in national legislatures by comparison is 25%. 14 deputies missed all 51 sessions of parliament in 2010. Current factions: on November 27, 2014, 5 factions and 2 parliamentary groups were formed. Parliamentary majority and majorities opposition. The first parliamentary majority was composed out the Communist Party of Ukraine, known as the Group 239. On July 16, 1990, the parliament adopted the Declaration about the State's Sovereignty of Ukraine. Out of 385 attending deputies for the declaration voted 355 with only 4 votes against it. 26 other deputies did not take part in voting. The 1994 parliamentary majority in Verkhovna Rada was very loose and was regarded as situational. It was often composed out Communist Party of Ukraine, Socialist Party of Ukraine, Agrarian Party, Interregional Deputy Group, and Group Unity. The second convocation of the parliament is better known for adopting the current constitution of Ukraine. On December 22, 1998, the parliamentary majority of the third convocation was created in Verkhovna Rada. It consisted of following factions: Fatherland, Group Revival of Regions, Community, Party of Greens of Ukraine, People Democratic Party, People's Movement of Ukraine, People's Movement of Ukraine, Group Independence, Party Reforms and Order Reforms Congress, Social Democratic Party of Ukraine, Labour Party of Ukraine, and non-affiliated deputies. On September 27, 2002, the parliamentary majority of the fourth convocation was created in Verkhovna Rada. It consisted of following factions: Agrarians of Ukraine, People Democratic Party, Parties of Industrialist and Entrepreneurs and Toiling Ukraine, Regions of Ukraine, Social Democratic Party of Ukraine, Group Democratic Initiatives, Group European Choice, Group People's Choice, Group People's Authority. On November 21, 2002, the parliament approved candidacy of Viktor Yanukovych, who picked a government. Following the Orange Revolution and amendments to the Constitution of Ukraine, on February 4, 2005, the parliament reformed government by entrusting Yulia Tymoshenko when there appeared new majority consisting of such factions as BYUT, Ukraine, Socialist Party of Ukraine, and Socialist Democratic Party of Ukraine, as well as deputy groups of For United Ukraine, Party of Regions and Party of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. The members of Communist Party of Ukraine demonstratively walked out of the session hall. On September 22, 2005, the parliament managed to create new majority with Ukraine, Socialist Party of Ukraine and Party of Regions to replace government of Tymoshenko with the Yekhanurov government that received a vote of no confidence in January next year. During convocation of the parliament between March 26, 2006 and April 2, 2007, there was one government. During spring and summer of 2006, Parliament went through hardship in creating majority to establish new government. Initially, on June 22, 2006, the parliamentary majority of the fifth convocation was created in Verkhovna Rada as the Coalition of Democratic Forces. It consisted of following factions: Ukraine, Bloc of Yulia Tymoshenko, Socialist Party of Ukraine. On July 7, 2006, the parliamentary majority of the fifth convocation was reformed in Verkhovna Rada as the Anti-Crisis Coalition. It consisted of following factions: Party of Regions, Communist Party of Ukraine, Socialist Party of Ukraine, and few deputies from Ukraine, and Bloc of Yulia Tymoshenko. That majority created the Alliance of National Unity. During convocation of the parliament between September 30, 2007 and December 14, 2012, there were two governments created. The first government was government of Tymoshenko, created on December 18, 2007 and was supported by the Bloc of Yulia Tymoshenko and Ukraine. After the election of Viktor Yanukovych as the President of Ukraine, on March 11, 2010 the Tymoshenko government was replaced with the Azarov government supported by Party of Regions, Communist Party of Ukraine, Litvan Bloc and Reforms for the Future. Members of Parliament equals. Members of the Verkhovna Rada are known officially as People's Deputies of Ukraine. According to the law on elections of national deputies of Ukraine, a citizen of Ukraine may become a People's Deputy if he or she has, on the day of election, a. reached 21 years of age, b. political franchise, c. resided in Ukraine for the last 5 years. Deputies have the right to free transportation, free use of the hall of official delegations, free housing, free medical services and free vacations at health spas. Each deputy is allowed to have up to 31 assistants consultants. 4 out of them are allowed to be admitted into the Secretariat of the Verkhovna Rada. The Ukrainian President, Prime Minister, members of the government and deputies all have parliamentary immunity and agents of law enforcement are prohibited from searching their homes or following them. During the Orange Revolution and the campaign for the 2007 parliamentary election Party of Regions, OUPSD and BYUT all promised to strip lawmakers of their parliamentary immunity. In June 2008 the parliament failed to adopt the bill on restriction of privileges for deputies and introduction of imperative mandate. 192 People's Deputies voted for the bill submitted by the BYUT faction out of 436 deputies registered in the plenary hall. The factions of the opposition Party of Regions, as well as the CPU and the Litvan Bloc voted against, the OUPSD faction voted partially for, and the BYUT faction voted unanimously for. A proposal to send the bill for the first reading for a second time also did not find support. In May 2009 the second Tymoshenko government approved a bill amending the law on the status of a People's Deputy of Ukraine. This bill reduced certain privileges for incumbent and former deputies. The parliament cancelled some benefits and payments to lawmakers in December 2011. Deputies possess full legal immunity during their term of office. In cases of egregious malfeasance, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine or the head of the Supreme Court of Ukraine can request that a deputy's immunity be revoked. The decision whether to revoke is up to the Verkhovna Rada. Deputies can also tender their resignation themselves. As of March 25, 2010 no deputies' immunity or their privileges were revoked. Individual deputies can be stripped of their immunity if a bill to strip their rights is passed by the Verkhovna Rada. Oath of office. Before assuming office, the deputies must take the following oath before the parliament, in original Ukrainian, in English translation. Other offices. Chairman and deputy chairman equals. The Verkhovna Rada elects from among its ranks a chairman, a first deputy chairman, and a deputy chairman. Before the chairman of a newly convoked Rada is elected, parliamentary sessions are presided over by members of a temporary presidium of the first session. The temporary presidium is composed of 5 deputies, representing the 4 largest parliamentary fractions plus the chairman of a preparatory deputy group of the first parliamentary session. However, the Rada may enact an ad hoc deviation from this composition rule. The chairman presides over parliamentary sessions, signs bills and sends them to the president for promulgation, signs and promulgates parliamentary acts, organizes staff work, etc. The chairman is also empowered to call special sessions of parliament, enact bills vetoed by the president when the Verkhovna Rada votes to overturn a veto by a 2/3 majority, and participate in meetings of the National Security and Defense Council. In circumstances where the post of President of Ukraine becomes vacant, the chairman of the Rada becomes acting head of state with limited authority. The chairman in duties of the president may dissolve parliament, appoint or submit for parliamentary approval candidates for key official posts, grant military ranks or state orders, and exercise the right of pardon. The Constitution and Ukrainian legislation contain no provision for presidential succession in cases where the posts of president and chairman of the Rada are vacant simultaneously. Presidium equals. The Presidium of the Verkhovna Rada is a collective name that was adapted for the chairman and his or her deputies out of tradition. Before the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was an official office that was elected at the first session of each convocation of the Supreme Soviet. Originally it consisted of a chairman, the chairman's 2 deputies, a secretary, and 19 additional members. Later compositions of the presidium changed. The presidium was regulated by Section 106 of the 1978 Constitution of the Ukrainian SSR. Since independence the institution has been discontinued, but the term is used for the leadership of parliament that includes the current chairman and his or her deputies and may include faction leaders. The first session of every newly elected parliament is headed by a temporary presidium that consists of 6 members of parliament according to Article 18 of the regulations of the Verkhovna Rada. Ceremonial meeting and first session equals. One of the most important sessions of the parliament is the first session of each newly elected parliament. The preparation for the session is conducted by the Preparation Deputy Group with support from the Office of the Verkhovna Rada. The formation of the group out of the newly elected People's Deputies is conducted by the chairman of the previous convocation or his/her deputy chairpersons. The group elects its own chairperson, his or her deputy and a secretary on principles for establishing the temporary special commission. The group terminates its activity with establishment of parliamentary committees. Before the opening of the first session of each newly elected parliament, all newly elected People's Deputies of Ukraine are gathered for a special ceremonial meeting to take the oath of office. An invitation to take the oath is given by the chairperson of the previous convocation who grants the leading word to the oldest member of the parliament who asks the members of parliament to rise and reads the oath out loud. Every member of parliament signs a copy of the oath that is held in the archives of the Verkhovna Rada. The plenary meetings of the first session review the following matters: formation of the provisional presidium of the first session, establishment and registration of the factions, the situation concerning legislation pending before Parliament with the chairman of the previous convocation, election of the counting commission, election of the chairman, election of the chairman's deputies, hearing of extraordinary messages on domestic and foreign affairs by the President of Ukraine, hearing and discussion of the Preparation Deputy Group report, about committees, about conciliation board of deputy factions in the Verkhovna Rada, about media coverage of the work of the Verkhovna Rada. Office of the Verkhovna Rada The Office of the Verkhovna Rada is an internal supporting department of the Verkhovna Rada that provides organizational, legal, social, analytical and other support to Parliament, its other departments and members of the Parliament. The office is apolitical in its role, and exists mainly to provide secretarial help. Before the first session of each newly elected Parliament the office provides to members of Parliament various documents among which are copies of the Constitution of Ukraine, the regulations of the Verkhovna Rada, the official results of election from the Central Election Commission of Ukraine, the law of Ukraine on the status of People's Deputies, among others. Office of the Ombudsman The Office of the Ombudsman at the Verkhovna Rada was established in 1998 and was led by Nina Karpachova until 2012. The office has its own secretariat and advisory council. The current ombudsman is Valeria Lutkovska who replaced Karpachova in 2012. Committees The Verkhovna Rada establishes parliamentary committees composed of various deputies. On December 4, 2014 the current parliament formed 27 committees and 2 special control commissions. The previous parliament had 29 committees and an ad hoc supervisory board. The 6th session of the Rada had 28 committees, including the Budget Committee, the Special Control Commission of the Verkhovna Rada on Privatization and the Committee on Transportation and Communications. There are no permanent or standing committees, instead, committees are reformed from one convocation to another. One of the most significant for the work of the Verkhovna Rada is the Budget Committee. Investigative commissions Members of the Verkhovna Rada are permitted to create a temporary investigative commissions. To create such a commission requires 1/3 of the constitutional composition of Parliament, 150 members. Before a draft on creation of such a commission may be scheduled for voting, it has to be approved by a relevant committee, the Committee on Regulations, Deputy Ethics, and Ensuring the Work of the Verkhovna Rada. Mass media Holos Ukraini, Rada TV. Incidents in Parliament, corruption in the parliament could be noticed, with several local millionaires being members of the Rada in one of the poorest countries in Europe. Fights and incidents. Brawls are not unusual in the Ukrainian parliament. On several occasions work in parliament is blocked by sit-ins by various parties. In 2000 and on April 4, 2013, the parliament split into two and held two sessions on two different premises. A microphone-throwing championship among MPs, organized by the Kiev Independent Media Trade Union, was held outside the building of the Verkhovna Rada on Friday, September 11, 2009, in response to an incident on September 1, 2009, when a communist MP snatched a microphone from a STB reporter and threw it downstairs. Several MPs participated. A noticeable incident was the disorder of April 27, 2010, after the parliament ratified a treaty that extended the Russian Black Sea Fleet lease in the Crimean port of Sevastopol until 2042, when Chairman Volodymyr Litvin had to be shielded with umbrellas as he was pelted with eggs, while smoke bombs exploded and politicians brawled. Another major incident occurred on December 16, 2010, when several Rada members were admitted to hospital after Party of Regions politicians stormed the parliament podium, which was occupied by the Bloc Yulia Tymoshenko faction. On December 12, 2012, an all-out scuffle broke out in parliament, as Batkivshchina party members attempted to prevent the swearing-in of two members who had left the party. The same day, members of the All-Ukrainian Union Svoboda removed the fence around the Verkhovna Rada that was installed early October 2012. The Speaker of the Parliament, Volodymyr Rybak, promised to review the incident of the fence removal. The fence is not accounted as the property of Parliament nor the city of Kiev. Rybak noted that the matter might require a review within a special designated committee. From the parliamentary election of October 28, 2012 till the first month of 2013, parliamentary work was virtually paralyzed because the opposition blocked the podium and chairman's seat on various days. International relations, interparliamentary union, parliamentary dimension of the Central European Initiative, Parliamentary Assembly of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, European Parliament, Euronest Parliamentary Assembly, NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Interparliamentary Assembly of Member Nations of the Commonwealth of Independent States, Interparliamentary Assembly of the Eurasian Economic Community, Guam Parliamentary Assembly, Interparliamentary Assembly on Orthodoxy, Parliamentary Assembly of the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation. Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Ukraine was accepted as a full member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in 1995. It is represented there by the parliamentary delegation of the Verkhovna Rada, consisting of 12 representatives including a chairperson of the delegation, a vice-chairperson and their 12 substitutes. In total, 24 members. The Ukrainian delegation also has its own permanent secretariat of 4 members that assist in the interparliamentary relationships between the PACE and the Verkhovna Rada. For the full list of members, refer to the PACE main website at assembly.co.int. 2002 to 2006, Boris Olenek, Anatoly Rakhansky, 2006 to 2007, C. Halivati, Hoy Nimiria, 2007 to 2012, Ivan Popescu, Ola Herasimyak, 2012, now Ivan Popescu, C. Sobolyev. Current composition. Elections. Political developments in Ukraine have led to repeated changes in the electoral system used for parliamentary elections. Each convocation of the Verkhovna Rada has been elected under a different set of laws, gradually evolving from the purely majoritarian scheme inherited from the Soviet era to a purely proportional scheme, effective from 2006 until 2010. In the 1990 and 1994 elections, all 450 MPs were elected in single-member districts. Ukraine was therefore divided at the time into 450 electoral districts. Each district sent one member to parliament. In order to win a seat, a candidate needed more than 50% of the votes. If no candidate had 50%, then the two leading candidates participated in a run-off vote. In the 1998 and 2002 elections, 225 MPs were elected in single-member districts as earlier. The remaining 225 MPs were elected on a proportional basis. These seats were divided between the parties who passed a 4% electoral threshold. In the 2006 and 2007 elections, all deputies were elected on a proportional basis. All seats were divided between the parties who passed a 3% electoral threshold. For the 2007 election, the threshold percentage was not changed, but some amendments to the election process were made. In the 2012 and 2014 elections, a mixed voting system was again used with a 5% election threshold. According to current law, the next election to the Verkhovna Rada will be in 2019. 2014 election equals. See also, Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union, Rada TV, video broadcasts of the Verkhovna Rada, Central Council of Ukraine, All Ukrainian Congress of Soviets, Central Executive Committee of Ukraine, Ukrainian Center for EU Civil Service Standards, public institution established to facilitate administrative reform to European Union standards. Notes. References. External links, official website. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Scheme of seats in the session hall. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Holozakriny newspaper. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Fish magazine. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Regulations of the Verkhovna Rada. Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Media related to Verkhovna Rada at Wikimedia Commons.